Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Into the Fire. How's it going, man?
Good, really good.
Good.
Yeah.
Glad to be here. It's Holiday Monday. I think a lot of people are sitting at home and getting ready for their big turkey dinner today.
Yeah.
Well, in Canada, of course. But
I can't believe you dragged me out of bed to do this.
I know, what a jerk. Hey,
Yeah,
unbelievable. But in any case, this is, again, if you're new to the show, Into the Fire, where every single week we talk about hot topics. And all we're trying to do is just try to clear the smoke to find some clarity. And today, we're going to be talking about a hot topic that I think maybe a lot of companies deal with. Maybe Bison deals with. We'll talk a little bit about that. But interdepartmental conflict. And interdepartmental conflict is something that I don't think any organization is immune from. But there's different perspectives on it that I've gained when talking to you. Interdepartmental conflict. First off, let me ask, does Bison have that?
Well, you know what, Ryan? I'm going to stop you before we even get into the whole show today.
Yeah, sure.
I want to take a minute because we've had some pretty rough weather out here for the last number of days, and people have been out of power all over the province. And, you know, to share with people a little bit, my grandma's still, today's her 93rd birthday, and she spent the last 4 days without electricity at her place. Now, fortunately, I have a very, very large family, and she hasn't been without a place to stay, and we've taken good care of her, of course. But yesterday, she was back at her house, and, you know, we had the generators going, power, you know, running some backup power for her and helping her out. But the hydro people finally got out there after 4 days of no power and helped her out, and I'm not complaining. This is a shout-out to hydro. I want to be clear about that. But when they did all the work that they had to do, and the number of hours that those men and women are doing, because it's not just the guys on the poles. I know there are people, you know, the ladies are in coordinating things in their offices. There's a full team getting this done. But when they got the power back on, the guys popped into my grandma's house and made sure, number one, that she was okay.
Get outta here.
And number two, that the power was on and everything was working fine.
That's cool.
And when we talk about service and business, right? And I talk about the big corporations, I talk about small. But when I talk about service and how that builds, man, those guys knocked it out of the park. Because I can't imagine the exhaustion that they're feeling after this many days, and this is still going, and how much work they still have to do, how much work they've done. But they took that minute to pop in and make sure that someone was secure in their house and that the power was actually on in the house when they knew it was working at the pole. So, you know, good on everyone at Hydro who is working really hard to get an entire province through a very difficult time.
Yeah, no
Good
kidding.
job.
It's been wild. I was going to see a client who lives off of Wellington Crescent yesterday, and my goodness, the amount of trees that have fallen in that area, in any area that has big trees. Actually, I was driving down Jubilee yesterday. You know, in Jubilee, one of the trees actually cracked at the trunk.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's incredible. I can't remember the last time we had a storm that was this bad.
Yeah, no, it's pretty bad. I'm thinking back to, for myself, and I might date myself a little bit, but October of 86 when we got a really big blizzard, and I remember running my snowmobile all over town, up and down Portage in Maine. It was great fun because there was no traffic moving. The cars weren't going anywhere. So
that's crazy.
Me and my buddies ripping around, and they all, you know, we had a great time with that.
Wow,
but
I wasn't even born yet, so I don't even know what that was like.
Oh, I know. Millennial.
What a jerk, eh?
Yeah.
No, that's a great shout out, and again, it's just a good sign of good service and people who care. You know, I love that, and what a tough time it's been. But again, quick shout out to Manitoba Hydro, and I'm glad you took just a moment just to thank them.
Yeah,
they're
absolutely.
Doing great work.
I say, like, the men and women that are busting their butts out there right now. Again, keep doing a great job, everybody. It's very much appreciated.
Absolutely. So back to my question about interdepartmental conflict, which is kind of that hot topic that we're talking about today. Do you experience interdepartmental conflict within Bison?
Well, you know what, Ryan? I'm you know, that's kind of one of those answers that yes and no. Now, because there's two types of conflict, right? And we've talked about this in previous shows. There's the conflict that's not good, where people are butting heads and, you know, they're not talking to each other. They're just not sharing anything. And the reason for that is a lack of trust, a lack of why, a lack of commitment to the company or to each other. And that's the bad conflict. But I think what you're getting at here is the good conflict. That's where we're pushing each other to be better. And, you know, have we had both? Yeah. Absolutely. I'm not going to beat around the bush. Of course we've had both. Have we learned to be better? Yeah. And that's taken a lot of work to learn to be better. But, you know, good conflict is, and I, honest to God, talked about this last Tuesday in one of our sales meetings, how important it is to have the sales team tied with operations, right? Like together. Because if they're not, sales can be out there selling their tails off. And if operations isn't prepared to be able to execute all that work, what a waste. And how does that make sales look? And at the same time, you've always seen, and I don't care what business it is, companies that pit these groups against each other in a bad way. And everyone laughs at the sales team and goes, oh, all they do is lunches and they're hanging around the office joking and golfing and whatever else they do. And salespeople don't do anything. Well, that's not true either. Because, if sales is knocking it out of the park, and I've said this around here so many times, sales is like the thermometer of the company. When they're hot, everyone's working. Yeah. And when everyone's working, everyone's happy and they're excited. Right. But as soon as sales comes off of their game, the thermometer drops and people are dragging their knuckles. They're not as happy as they were because there's not as much work. They're getting a little nervous. What are we doing? You have to send somebody home. Yeah. But that's how important them working together is.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't mean they don't challenge each other, right? You know what? We've sold this great big job, and I need you guys to get it in, and I need you to impress the customer, and I need you to do this. But that's not just sales and operations. That's every department. You know what? When we've got everything done, it's up to our admin people to make sure that they get the billings out in time, that we pass everything through the system to the best of our ability. So the challenges are, in so many areas, and the opportunity for conflict to say we need to do this better, right?
And that's the perspective shift, because you will notice that no company is free of conflict, good conflict or bad conflict. A lot of the times it comes down to communication, understanding one another.
Right.
It comes down to kind of getting rid of our ego. So for example, I experienced a lot of that within marketing and sales. Sales always believes that, marketing is just that organization that they have fun. They do creative stuff. They do fun stuff. Sales, we do the real work. Right? I've been on both sides of the equation and know that both are absolutely integral to growing a business.
Right.
The biggest challenge was in understanding the value that both of them bring to the organization. So a big piece of it is just seek first to understand than to be understood, right? A little Coveyism. Yeah. Understand what your marketing team is doing. Understand what the sales team is doing. Understand what operations is doing in the grand scheme of things.
I almost chuckle a little bit as you're saying that, because how many people and how many companies are out there that think that marketing and sales are the same thing, right? And they absolutely aren't. And you're right. One has to be challenging the other, and yet they have to be aligned. Like if what we're doing in marketing isn't lining up with what they're trying to do in sales, why are we doing it?
Exactly.
And we need to have the conflict, good conflict, as I say it, of sales coming back saying, you know what, don't go there. We're not ready for that yet. Yeah. Maybe that's a great idea. Let's work on it in 6 months. Or let's start building a campaign for it in the future. Yep. But we need to be working on something that works right now, and as well as that future vision of where we want to go.
That's right. So how do you facilitate good conflict then? Because I think for the most part, this is something that we talk about on the show because it's something that you believe in, something that you want to incorporate into the Bison culture, this comfort with conflict, being comfortable with conflict, because we come from a base of trust. So organizations that are out there right now, they're saying, well, my company, we have a lot of conflict right now, but it's not good conflict, Rob. Like, it's bad conflict, and the fact that it's creating those water cooler conversations, it's creating a clear divide. If you saw that happening in Bison, where all of a sudden you saw the team sort of split, and now it's just like, it's marketing versus sales, or it's operations versus sales now, what would you do?
Well, first things, we sit down with the management team. Am I the only one seeing this? Right? Let's get the team together. Let's rally them around. Okay, if this is truly what's going on, why? Let's get to the root cause. Let's not work with symptoms. Let's get to the root cause of what's going on. And then from there, maybe it breaks down to one-on-one conversations. Is someone not happy? Okay, you're not happy. Now let's get down to the why. Why aren't you happy? Do you understand why we're doing this?
Brilliant.
Why are we going forward with this? If they don't understand the why, there's no way they can buy into what you're doing.
That's right.
And it's interesting that even as we've gone through some reorganization within the company ourselves, a lot of times, and especially on the admin side of things, when we're trying to push new admin processes through, we understand that something will get to this part, and then that person says, well, I'll do all my stuff, and it'll be nice and clear and smooth, not realizing that they have just screwed up the next person down the line. Because they didn't understand the why. They didn't understand the end goal of what we're doing. So whether it's sales, admin, operations, every piece has to understand. They have to be, told the why we're doing something. You ask your kids, go shovel the driveway. And then they look at you and they go, well, why? Because I can't get the car to the driveway.
I love it.
But at the end of the day, if you're not explaining why, and I don't care whether it's at home, whether it's at work, people aren't going to buy into what you're doing. So when you have that problem that you bring up there, that things are starting to fragment, you haven't communicated well to your team, and that's on me or the management team.
Absolutely.
So again, that comes back to trust and commitment, communication.
Absolutely.
Very important parts of your business.
I love the little shout out to Tanya over there. Hey, we felt a little lonely. We didn't have anybody in the office, so you had to bring Tanya in.
Yeah,
Tanya, Rob's daughter, obviously. You've seen her in some of the photos on LinkedIn or Instagram, and she's a star, baby. She's a star.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's funny. One of the things that I always love to pull back from is how there is no secret to solving problems. It just comes down to hard work, but it comes down to the awareness. So how do you, as a CEO, stay aware of what's going on in the company? You can't do it yourself.
No.
Because you're busy and you have your hands in a whole bunch of other pies trying to solve problems. So how do you ensure that you're always tuned into the culture and that you're understanding, like, there's a little bit of conflict here and my spidey senses are tingling. How do you stay plugged in like that all the time when you're so busy?
Well, I'm going to tell you spend time. First off, we have weekly management meetings where we talk about a number of different things and we're able to go back and forth. But that's once a week. Once a week isn't enough. What you got to do is get out of the office, get out of your chair, go walk around, see your people. Right? Have conversations. How's it going? I've talked about this in past shows as well.
Yeah, that's true.
You got to talk to people. You have to find out what's going on. You have to engage your management team. How's that going? How's Jimmy doing today? How's Billy doing today? How's Sally doing today? How's Tanya doing today? And make sure that all those people, go kind of through a list. Jimmy's a little off. Oh, how come? Oh, you know what? Maybe Jimmy's having a problem outside of work. Well, let's help him through it.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? Because nothing builds trust and team loyalty like understanding and having the empathy to work with your people and support them when they're having bad times, because we're all people.
That's right.
We're all going to have challenges outside of work.
Of course. I actually think that there's two character traits that perhaps a CEO, a leader, a manager needs to have in order to recognize conflict, solve conflict, and help one another through it. And that's something that I've really learned from you, which is empathy. Number one, you want to have empathy. Seek first to understand and to be understood.
Right.
You don't want to necessarily push your opinion on someone. You want to understand. And the second one is curiosity. Everything you just said there was curiosity based. You asked a lot of questions. You got out of your office. Like, how's Jimmy doing? How's Sam doing? How's Tanya doing? How are these people doing?
Right.
And I'm not doing well. Oh, well, why isn't this person doing well? Or they're doing great. Great. Why are they doing great? Asking questions and being curious is so important as a leader, as a manager. So I think that's an important takeaway that maybe it's kind of underlying and maybe you didn't realize, but empathy and curiosity, man, I think those are two very important character traits that we need to continue to exploit in our leaders and in our managers. Be curious. Ask questions.
You know what, Ryan? And you touch on something really important there. I mean, the be curious thing, asking the questions. How do you learn? How do you grow if you don't ask the questions? How do you become a better individual if you don't ask the questions?
That's right.
Right? Get to know people. I mean, and I've shared all kinds of stories about how, the coffee trips that I'm now doing with my staff on a regular basis and trying to get out. But, I can't do that with everybody all in a week. That takes time. So through the day, still, damn flies again.
I saw that. I was like, no, do not land on his nose again. We can't do this again.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we could do it again. I love it.
Yeah, what's
funny.
going on? Yeah,
it was a little small. I don't know if you're going to catch that one. But.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, spending the time, even in the office here, because you can't manage from your chair.
That's right.
You can't, give a vision. You can't lead if you're locked in your office, if you're locked up in the ivory tower, as they say.
That's true.
You got to get out, and you can't have a monologue with people. You have to have a dialogue. It's got to be two ways. It can't be a one-way street. If you're preaching to your people or dictating to your people, they're not going to buy into what you're doing. Yeah. They got to be part of the decision.
That's right.
They got to be part of where you're going and why you're going there.
You got to imagine people respect. I know that I did. when I was an employee, I respected the CEO that kind of got their hands dirty. You know, when they would come down on the ground floor and they would work with us, or they would take an interest in what we were doing. It wasn't micromanaging. I didn't look at it as in like, oh, busybody, always trying to get involved somehow. No, because you could really tell they cared. Right? They cared. What are you working on? How's it going? Great. How can I help? I was like, oh, cool question. How can I help?
Yeah.
They were interested in making sure that their business ran well.
Yeah.
I love that.
I've often said that some of the best help I can give is getting the hell out of the way.
Hey, that's true too. How can I help? Get out. All right then.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm out of here. Yeah, done.
Yeah. Hey man, again, that comes down to getting rid of your ego, I think, as well, right? Being able to separate yourself from your ego and, you know, wanting to help. And that's one thing too. It's nice to be the leader who goes in and helps, but it's also important to know when to step back and allow your people to do their own job, which comes down to, again, trust.
100%. It's trust.
Exactly.
You know, and the other thing too is you've made yourself approachable. So when they do need that help, they're not afraid to come ask.
That's right.
You know, because they know they're not going to get yelled at. They're not going to be condescendingly spoken to.
That's right.
Right? That, you know, when they truly come with a problem, well, let's figure it out. Let's work it out together, and we'll get you back on track. But if I'm in there every couple of minutes saying, how are you doing this, or why are you doing that? First off, I'm doing your job for you. So if we're both doing the same job, right? I don't need one of us. And I'm pretty sure I'm not firing me.
Yeah. No, that's exactly
You know?
right. How tough is that though, right? 'Cause I see us sharing different things that we've noticed, and, you know, saying, ask questions, be curious. But it's such a fine line, right? Where somebody's like, oh, okay, I'm going to go ask questions and be curious now. And they start asking questions, but they could annoy their people because they're asking too many questions. You know, they're trying to get themselves too involved. It really takes a high level of self-awareness as a leader as well.
Yeah.
To really recognize the interdepartmental conflict, recognize what you can and can't do, recognize what you need your team to do. This is a really tough job, man.
It can be. It really can. You know, I was thinking about this the other day, and how important it is when you've brought a supervisor or manager into a position, you know, to backfill yourself, because you know the company's grown, you've moved up a stage, you've got more people to manage and more things to do, but you've got that area of expertise, and you've put a new manager in play, and that manager now, they're working hard at it. There's two things that need to happen. One, I need to be able to fire myself from that past job, right? I got to be able to walk away and say, here you go. Now, I know that new manager is going to be going through a few different emotions of their own, because they're going, oh, I've got this job. And you know, sometimes the fear, right? Yeah. Can I do it as well?
Yeah.
And they have to be able to fire themselves from their previous job. And the toughest thing that I've observed over the years is people making that transition from, say, technician to supervisor. And they got to get out of that technician mentality, and they got to start getting themselves into a supervisor mentality.
Absolutely.
And then the next transition from supervisor into manager, where, you know, now you're looking at numbers, and now you're looking at driving the department. Now you're not, you know, helping the guys in the field with the technical stuff anymore. You're making that next thing and that next jump.
Of course.
But you have to be able to fire yourself from your past position and embrace the new position, because that's so important to be able to embrace that. And that's where, again, when they trust you as a senior leader to come in your office, sometimes just sit down and go, God, I'm having one of those days. Oh, what's going on?
Yeah, no kidding.
What's going on? And if they trust you because they know you haven't been micromanaging them, you've allowed them to do their jobs, you've allowed them to go through the steps they need to, that builds a constructive conversation.
That's right. As we finish up here, what are some resources that you might push to the community to help them understand how to deal with interdepartmental conflict a little bit easier? What would you recommend to them if they want to learn more?
If you want to learn more about that, I'm going to say one of the books that I've read, and I know there's a lot of people out there that aren't big readers, but Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, right? That's a big one. And it's interesting that what we're doing with that one right now is I read it, and I got a lot from it. And I know you've read it as well. But one of our other senior managers read it. And then we put a challenge out. And it's gone from every manager in the building. When one finishes it, he has to then talk about what his takeaways were from that particular book, why it's so important. Then it goes to the next guy.
It's so important.
And then off to the next lady. And then from there and so on. And we're going all the way through our management team so that 2 things are happening. One, they understand what I'm reading and why. They understand how important some of this stuff is that I'm not just talking about trust in a meeting just because. And they've actually seen the changes with our team.
Yeah.
What the difference has been in the last, because I started this last December, so 10 months ago.
December.
Back,
Yeah.
you know.
So it adds up.
I started doing this stuff, like I said, almost a year ago now. And what a difference, because this team knows each other. They've gotten to trust each other. They can have the good conflict.
They're speaking a similar language now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I love that.
It pulls them together.
That's huge. That's huge, yeah.
And I've got guys that historically don't read. Reading a good book that helps build our business, helps build them as managers. Because, again, I've talked about this before. I can talk about this till the end of time, but the next level down, need to be able to understand it and move it forward so that they can take it to their next level down and move it through so the entire company is thinking the same way.
I love that, man. I really do. I think that that's such a great takeaway in that any books that you're reading that you are finding valuable, that you want to have a positive impact on the culture, you need to not just do that yourself and hold that in your in your Chrome Dome and keep it there. You got to let that out and don't just allow yourself to explain it. Share the book. Ask everyone else and tell them, like, this is a book that I read that is really important to our culture. I want you to read this as well. But again, have a conversation about it, have a discussion about it. And 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is a fantastic book, I think, from a cultural perspective. I think if you're trying to develop a culture based on trust, which we all do, who doesn't? If you don't, then why are you watching this show? Don't watch this show, But we all believe in building cultures, corporate cultures based in trust. We want to create healthy conflict. We want to be able to build commitment, accountability. That's how we get results.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that book, I think it's a great recommendation.
Well, the other nice part of that, Ryan, is at that point, I've tried to explain the why. They start reading the book and they go, get it now.
Got it.
I 100% got where he's going, why he's going there. And so they understand the exercises that we're doing in every meeting.
Totally.
And when they look around the room and the way this team is playing together, they sit back and go, okay, this 100% makes sense to us now.
Yeah, love it, man. Love it. Great discussion, man.
Yeah.
Great discussion. That's this week's episode of Into the Fire with my good friend, Rob Reed. And we will catch you back here next. Oh, well, of course, Rob Reed and Tanya, of course. We'll catch you back here next week on next week. Oh, I'm stumbling on my own words here.
Okay, do you want me to try?
You try it this time.
Okay, we'll see you next week on Into the Fire. Thank you.
I love it.